The very beginning of this chapter in our textbook begins, "How do I counsel individuals whose beliefs and values do not align with my own?" In shock, I actually blinked a few times and reread that sentence. It's the very reason that I chose to come to Liberty out of the many schools that offer a mental health counseling program. I came for the grounding in Christian thought and process that's different than my own specific religion, because these beliefs are the ones that I expect to encounter most often in potential future clients. And I wanted to have a basis for and context for relating to them in a culturally sensitive way. I identify as a Christian, and I intend to practice as a professional counselor with a Christian worldview, because faith is the framework in which life makes sense to me. However, from a theological standpoint, I found that my exact beliefs are not in perfect alignment with every other person who identifies as Christian. So it was important to me to understand both our differences and similarities, because there's a wide interpretation of how different situations can play out. As a professional counselor, my personal identity as a Christian takes second place in the counseling relationship. Counseling is about helping the client achieve their goals. I understand how that might be heard as God is less important to me. However, that's not true. My relationship with my Heavenly Father reigns supreme in all things. Keeping the counseling relationship focused on the client doesn't violate. When handled well, I see it as an emulation of the example Jesus Christ set forth, and it is worthy for me to attempt to follow. He spent much of his ministry among sinners and those who were looked down on as being socially less desirable. He taught us how to hate the sin while loving the sinner. In effect, treating the church as a hospital for the sick, broken, and sin-laden. People who are perfect would have no need of his saving grace. As a practical example, consider the adulterous woman and the mob who came to stone her in John chapters 7 and 8. Death by stoning was the prescribed punishment for adultery under Jewish law at that time, so they were completely justified in their actions. But how did Jesus handle it? He asked them to look inward at their own sinfulness first and consider what would happen if they were similarly convicted. The crowd dispersed, and Jesus told the woman to go and sin no more. He didn't condone what she'd done, but neither did he condemn her. He separated the sin from the sinner. And that's the pattern that I try to follow in life, and I intend to follow in counseling. To understand a client's issue, allow their conclusions to stand, offer to sit with them through the hard battles and the consequences. My judgment isn't needed or relevant for someone else to come to terms with their own beliefs and actions. Perhaps all of this is a very wordy way to say my views align most with the intermediate model of integration posited by David Entwistle. In his model, themes, ideas, and patterns for behavior are drawn from both biblical texts and different schools of psychology. All have something to contribute. Each has an application within the other. I believe you can see this demonstrated in the example of how I apply the concepts of Jesus' dealings with the adulterous woman just prior. I'm choosing to think of it as an opportunity rather than a challenge in creating rich and positive relationships with very diverse people. Finally, in section A4B of the 2014 ACA Code of Ethics, there's very similar alignment with both my Christian worldview and with Entwistle's intermediate models of disciplinary relationships, spies, colonists, rebuilders, and neutral parties. I don't really like the connotation of spy, colonist, or neutral party, so I'm going to focus on being a rebuilder and help clients create their best life from whatever pieces they feel are broken. Thank you.